What's going on YouTube? So last year we got to spend time with both the 6-cylinder and 4-cylinder versions of our favorite driving Korean sedan, this Genesis G70. And for the 2026 model year, Genesis is giving it major updates, including a restructuring of the trim levels, as well as making this top trim less expensive. So with a price reduction of $2,500, does this make this a better pick than ever before? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Now, like always, let's start out with our spec dump and what is under the hood. So you continue to have two different engine choices, as I mentioned earlier. This is the 6-cylinder version, a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6, making 365 horsepower. It's paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and the combined fuel economy with all-wheel drive is 19 mpg.
Now, the base price for the G70 this year is $42,000, and this top trim has been reduced in price. If you're looking to buy one or any new vehicle, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes to get the best price. Now, of course, later on, we'll show you the performance of this model and what it's like behind the wheel, as well as getting things like our sound level reading, and at the end, discussing resale reliability.
But as always, we need to close up the hood so we can take a look at the beautiful exterior design as well as the inside. Now, to start off, I want to talk about the adjustments to the trim levels. So, as you can see down below, we have kind of a consolidation of the trims. The 3.3T Sport Advanced trim is no longer offered. And then the previous 2.5T, which was the 4-cylinder with the Sport Prestige, that is now just the Prestige. So it kind of loses the sport design elements to distinguish the models a little bit better. That being said, what you're looking at right now is the Sport Prestige with the 3.3-liter twin turbo, which means that's why we have the most aggressive looking design. We've got the smoked chrome finish to our signature Genesis grille. And then over here on our headlights, you've got the signature Genesis quad beam design. Of course, they're fully LED across all of the models, and you also have the split daytime running light and turn signal indicator. And as we move around to the back, of course, it continues with that athletic appearance.
And even as this vehicle ages, I think it just looks so good. Now, as far as the individual design touches, I'll start with our taillights. As you would expect, every single element in this taillight unit is LED. This is a luxury car after all, so your turn signal and your brake light, as well as your reverse light, are all LED. You have prominent Genesis branding. And then down here in the lower fascia, I absolutely love the way this looks because we have these really cool circle integrated exhaust outlets. It's actually pumping out a quad exhaust system.
Now moving on to the wheels, we've got some new designs for the 2026 model year. This is a 19-inch alloy wheel. As you can see, we've got the gloss black finish, and prominently featured behind that, you have Brembo brakes. You get Brembo brakes actually on every single version of the G70, but you get the red brake caliper finish if you choose a V6 model. I think it looks really nice overall. As far as the mirrors are concerned, these are fully loaded. So we have blind spot monitoring, we have auto dimming on both the driver and the passenger side, in addition to power folding and heating.
Now, at the side of the G70, this vehicle comes in at 184.4 inches in length, and I do want to mention new color changes for the 2026 model year. They've kind of replaced two blue colors with this color right here, and I have to say it is absolutely beautiful here in person. This is known as Capri Blue. Now, as far as your safety systems are concerned, you have all of those as standard equipment. That will even include things like adaptive cruise control with the highway drive assist function. But guys, there are some changes on the inside as well that we need to talk about. But first, if you're new here, we're brothers and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We started young, and since then we've reviewed over 2,000 cars at every price point.
And if you want to know about all the latest and greatest rides, then make sure to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family.
Let's learn a lot and have some fun with all the newest cars. Now let's move to the cabin. First, here's our key fob. It's the latest Genesis design, nice and premium. Of course, you have standard smart entry and remote start as well. Walking up to the vehicle, it senses your approach and folds the mirrors out, and then you can just grab behind the handle to unlock the door. Now, taking a look at the interior, there's no design changes, but like we've been talking about throughout this video, there are some kind of equipment changes and restructuring, and we'll talk about that as we go throughout the interior. But first, let's talk about the seats, because those are actually subject to those changes. So you have a leatherette on your lower end examples. Once you get to the 2.5T Prestige, that's where you get real leather. However, what's noteworthy is this is the fully loaded model, the 3.3T Sport Prestige. This now comes with real leather instead of the Napa leather. So previously that was the only trim that had the kind of the highest grade leather. Now they're just going to stick with the real leather across all of those trims. And of course that gives you a little bit of cost savings, but it's still very premium. It looks nice. You have about 3 different colors you can choose from. Plus we have 16 ways of adjustment on these higher end examples with things like power thigh extension and adjustable bolsters. Most of the trims additionally get memory seats. And let's go ahead and climb inside. Now closing up the door, let's look around at the rest of the cabin materials. Over here you've got the leatherette and the perforated leatherette, soft touch plastic along the top. The upper dash is finished in a soft touch plastic with a stitching detail. We have more of the leatherette that covers all of the center section and a little bit down through here, and then more of it over here for your knee to rest against. One material update I want to point out is that the suede headliner is no longer on the Sport Prestige. Let's fire it up with the standard push button start. And jumping into some individual details, we'll begin with the gauge cluster. It continues to be a partially digital cluster, so obviously the right side here is reconfigurable with some different kinds of information. And then the other side there with your speedo is fixed. You also get a head-up display if you choose this top model, the Sport Prestige. Now, as we pull back to the steering wheel, we've got a very sporty design on board with a leather wrapping and perforation over here, paddle shifters behind the wheel, and it's power, tilt, and telescoping. One update is that a heated steering wheel now comes standard on all but the base trim level. Now, taking a look at interior storage, this is a small sedan, but we'll still check it out with the donut test to see how the console compares to the competition. We, of course, do that because the donut is our logo and we want to be able to compare. In this case, it gets 6 donuts inside, which is going to be decent for this class, but this class is always pretty small, of course. We have 2 cup holders right there. Up in the front, you have a wireless phone charging pad. That's also on all but the base model. Moving to the shifter, it is an electronic style. Just pull back for drive, go the opposite way for reverse. When you go into reverse, we've got the 360-degree camera system. Pulled up, it does have active trajectory as well as parking sensors. This is now for 2026 standard on all but the base model. Just be aware it's not the newest Genesis design where you can like spin all around the vehicle in 3D. Press that P there for park. Back here you've got your drive mode select. You also have brake hold and your electronic parking brake. Moving up, we have our climate controls. This was something that was updated with our refresh last year. And it does still retain physical controls to adjust the temperature and many of the main settings, although right here in the center for some manual adjustments that is using a touchscreen with haptic feedback. Now also inside of that screen, you'll notice you have 3-stage heated seats. That's standard equipment on every G70. All but the base trim for 2026 will now come with ventilated seats as well. Up above, we also have a nice row of physical volume knobs and audio controls for our audio system. All but the base trim comes with a 15-speaker Lexicon sound system. Let's give it a sample. Overall sound quality of the system is pretty good. It is a little lacking in quality compared to the Bang & Olufsen sound system you get in like the G80 and the other Genesis products. That being said, it does still fill up this cabin nicely. Now let's move on to our display. This is another area where you might notice a little bit of a discrepancy between the latest Genesis products and this one, because this is an older product at this point. It's still staying with the 10.25-inch display. It also has the older software on board, so our built-in navigation doesn't quite look as sharp. And this is, like I said, using the older software. So the main thing that you might want to know is that it still uses a wired connection for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, in comparison to the wireless that you get on the other Genesis products at this point. Up top, we've got the auto dimming mirror with HomeLink universal remotes. And then I'll slide back the sunshade for the wide sunroof. That's how Genesis describes it. As you can tell, it's a little bit larger than the typical sunroof, but not quite panoramic, and this is included on all but the base model.
Now let's take a second to talk about the rear seats of the G70. Now, when it comes to the rear seats, and you'll see the cargo capacity a little bit later, this is going to be smaller than a lot of its competition, such as the BMW 3 Series, which, by the way, if you didn't know, we actually own on this channel. Now, as far as the legroom figures, they're not awful. 35 inches of legroom and about 37 inches of headroom. That does mean for someone who's my size, I'm 5'9", it's going to be a little tight, but it's certainly not bad. If you're over 6 foot, you may not want to sit in the back seat, though, so be aware of that. Now, as far as the knee room figure, we brought official Car Confections ruler along, and we're still sitting at about 7 inches of knee room, so that's not bad, and my feet can also slide up underneath of the seat. And I will point out that these seats are kind of almost hug you in the back, so it feels nice and comfortable. If we fold down the center armrest, we do have 2 cup holders inside. That's good because that's going to be the only spot you have to put a bottle or something like that. Here in the center section, we have rear vents. No climate controls, though, so keep that in mind. And then down at the bottom, we have 2 USB-C ports. The center tunnel is quite large, so this middle passenger may be a little uncomfortable. Then if you check out the door trim, we have a nicely done one. Lots of soft touch plastic, some more silver trim, perforated leatherette in the middle, as well as on the armrest portion. A tiny bit of storage, and I do want to point out that heated rear seats are not offered on the G70. Now, those of you familiar with the G70 may notice this 26 change, but we actually lose the fully power trunk. So this used to have a fully power trunk on the top example. That's no more for 2026, but of course keep in mind you do have a pretty big price reduction on this trim. Now, as far as the cargo capacity is concerned, we're sitting at 10.5 cubic feet of cargo capacity. That is once again going to place this as one of your smaller offerings in this compact luxury sedan space, so keep that in mind. And the seats do fold to 60-40 split, so that'll kind of alleviate that a little bit. Now, if you're looking to cross-shop this G70 with maybe an SUV in the luxury side, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/vehicle rankings. The reason you do that is because we've looked at numerous vehicle segments and ranked each of those models in individual categories that might matter more or less to you. Things like cargo capacity, powertrain choices, luxury in the front, resale reliability, and even safety. So if you want to make an informed buying decision, go to carconfections.com/vehicle rankings. Now let's go ahead and get our cargo length, width, and height figures. As far as cargo length, 39 inches is what you can expect. The opening is going to be a little bit narrow down here at the bottom, 29 inches, and the height is going to be definitely on the shorter side at only about 17 inches. Now if we lift up the floor, you will find a spare tire, which is certainly not a given nowadays. Well, guys, here we are behind the wheel of the 2026 Genesis G70, and this test drive will be discussing quite a lot, as you can see on the screen right now. We'll also be getting things like our sound level reading, but first we need to go ahead and start with a hard acceleration. Wow.
Just a little punch of the throttle there. There's a red light coming up, but that gives you a good sample of just how quick this model is. We've driven this numerous times in the past, and we're always very impressed by how fast it is. So this, of course, is the 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6. We have 365 horsepower, 376 pound-feet of torque, so a lot of power, a lot of torque as well. It really pushes you back in your seat. And then we're paired with the all-wheel drive system, so it gives you really excellent traction even if it's raining outside.
Yeah, now I really love this upgraded motor setup, but the standard motor is also going to be quite impressive. So that's the 4-cylinder version. Like Drew said, we actually extensively were able to live with that 4-cylinder version for an entire week last year, and that's very nice as well. It's a 2.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder, 300 horsepower, 311 pound-feet of torque. So honestly, for having really healthy power numbers, even in the V6 model, you're really not sacrificing a ton if you choose that base 4-cylinder, because that still has 300 horsepower. So very nice, really on both ends when it comes to the powertrain.
Very nice. Now, as far as the transmission is concerned, this is an 8-speed automatic. As you can see, nice quick shifts. It's very smooth as well, and you can use the paddle shifters if you want to take manual control. It does, give you pretty good control, as we learned in our long-term test.
Now, as far as how power is routed to the ground, you do have standard rear drive that even goes for the V6 option as well. And let's talk about your fuel economy. So we sit at 24 miles per gallon as your best fuel economy. That's with the 2.5 turbo rear drive. Of course, if you get the V6, that's going to cost you a little bit at the pump. 20 mpg with rear drive, or 19 miles per gallon with this version. It is worth noting that is certainly not very good fuel economy for a sedan. It's going to be a lot worse than some of its main rivals like the BMW M340i, so that is something to keep in mind. All right, and we are speeding up to 55 miles per hour so we can get our sound level reading in the G70. We have it on fan speed 1, so let's see how quiet it is. 57.2 decibels is what we have settled in at in the 2026 Genesis G70. We don't have to sit here and guess how it compares to some of the rivals. We can find that at carconfections.com/sound level readings. And as far as how it does compare to the competition, it's not quite the quietest. The reigning champion of the segment is actually the BMW 3 Series that we have as our long-term vehicle, the 330e. That is the quietest one, but overall it's still a very nice and quiet cabin. Now, also adding to that luxurious feel is pretty good ride quality as well. Now, in a compact luxury sports sedan, you kind of expect it to be sporty, and indeed, as you go over some bumps in the road, you will feel some of that translate into the cabin, but I think it's going to be perfectly adequate for most people, and it does kind of have that dual character where it can be pretty luxurious if you want it to be, or also very sporty if you want it to be. One note, though, is that for 2026, adaptive dampers have been removed, so we do not have adaptive dampers here on this fully loaded example.
Right, but like Mason was saying, I feel like the default setup of this really does still strike a good balance. That was one of the reasons why we really praised a lot with the 2.5 liter model, because even though it was more affordable, didn't have the adaptive dampers, it still really handled very nicely. Now time for our airball and our slam dunk. I'll start with the slam dunk. That is going to be the price reduction. Yes, you did lose some equipment throughout, but I think what they removed is probably worth a lot less than the $2,500 that they reduced the price, and it won't be all that significant to most people because it still leaves you with all the important things really intact, but makes for a much bigger delta between, some of the main competition like the M340i BMW.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on the flip side, the airball is going to be the technology. They've tried to keep this model updated, but some of the areas it is starting to show its age. I think tech is one of the big ones. This 10.25-inch screen is very small compared to most of the competition at this point. Also, the not full digital gauge cluster. So just a couple things there. If that doesn't really matter much to you, then you can disregard that. But I think especially if you hop into an M340i and then back into this, the tech is going to stand out. Now let's talk pricing for the G70. So we start at $42,850 this year for that base 2.5 rear drive model. Now, as far as the trim structure, of course, it elevates up quite a bit. You end at this 3.3T Sport Prestige all-wheel drive. As you can see, that's what we have today. We have the 26 Sport Prestige all-wheel drive. Our base price is $55,000. And then as we add a couple accessories in, as well as our $1,350 destination, $57,455 is what we're looking at today. And like I said at the very beginning, that is actually a pretty significant price drop, especially for this trim level. That's about a $2,500 discount over what it was in 2025 model year. Now, yes, you do lose some equipment, but I think that's a pretty good trade-off. Now, if you're looking to buy a Genesis G70 or any new vehicle, we'd encourage you to go to carconfections.com/newcarquotes. The reason you do that is because we have a tool on our website that will connect you with local car dealers in your area to get you the best price. It's also going to give you access to invoice pricing information, which is a great tool for dealership negotiation. If you'd like to take advantage of that, as well as our monthly payment tool, you can find that in our video description, as well as a pinned comment down below. But buying a vehicle is about more than just the original MSRP, so let's talk about resale and reliability as well. First up, let's talk about resale value. As an economics graduate myself, we took the time to develop what we think is a good estimate for this G70's potential resale value. We estimate that after 5 years and 60,000 miles, it'll be worth 42.08% of original MSRP, and after 10 years and 120,000 miles, 12.4%. Now, it's worth noting that is definitely lower than industry average for all resale value percentages, but it is very much in line with the German competition, such as BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi.
Now, we've also done the same for reliability by developing the Combined Reliability Index. This takes into account several studies on reliability from trustworthy sources and combines them in a way that gives you the most holistic picture. In this regard, Genesis actually ties the overall industry average for all vehicle brands.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about our resale values, our reliability data, or our methodology, be sure to go to carconfections.com/resale and carconfections.com/reliability. Buying a new vehicle is a very big decision, so you want to make sure you're making a smart purchase, especially if you're cross-shopping between different vehicle brands. Now, lastly, when it comes to your warranty, you do have a 5-year, 60,000-mile basic warranty, a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Genesis is also including 3 years and 36,000 miles of complimentary maintenance, which makes this the very best luxury warranty out there. And guys, that's going to wrap up our in-depth review of the 2026 Genesis G70. If you enjoyed watching this video or found it helpful in your purchasing decisions, which we hope you did, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. By subscribing, you're going to get the latest car reviews such as this, and you're also going to be a part of our Car Confections family. I promise you won't want to miss out. If you're already a part of our family, thank you so much for your continued support, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.